Hi, and welcome to the first ever Window Film Magazine podcast. I'm the host, Vinnie Driscoll, and today I am joined by Drew Vass, who is the VP of Creative and Client Services at KMR. Drew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Vinny. I appreciate it. I know we're
Yeah,
going to flip the scripts, but hey, I'm your
yeah, I mean
first
this
guest,
yeah,
and I'm honored.
this is our very first podcast. I'm excited. And to me, I feel like we talked offline. I said I'm going to flip the script today because I really want the, the listeners to get to know me. So I'm going to hand off the interviewing responsibilities to you, and you're going to interview me so that we can go over who I am. The mission of the podcast. So take it away, Drew.
Hey, I hope to do you proud. I'm just going to say that. I also hope that your second guest isn't my poodle pointer, but if a FedEx truck shows up or something, that could happen. All right, we're just going to edit that out
You know
in the
what?
recorded version.
As someone who's done this many times, I can tell you that my dog has been part of my previous podcasts more times than I care to admit.
And people might like and care about our dogs more than us, Vinny. It
That's
happens. People love dogs.
yeah, my
So,
dog barks at everything.
yeah. Well, anyhow, yeah, thanks for having me on. So I was going to say, if you have longtime members of the window film industry out there, they may remember me. I was the editor way back in the day. I'm not even going to say how way back and date myself, but yeah, so I've been around. But I thought, and you thought, that maybe the first thing to do was just get a little introduction out of the way because I know that you are fairly new, right, to the
Mhm.
industry and to the
Yep,
magazines. So, yeah, I thought maybe we should just jump in and talk a little bit about Vinnie Driscoll. What do you
for
think of
sure.
that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great place to start. So a little bit about me. I've been at um, KMR, which is the parent company of Window Film Magazine, and also PPF Mag. And I think it's almost 11 months, Drew. Can you believe that? I've been here
I
almost a
can't
year.
believe it. Yeah, that's amazing. It seems honestly, it seems like a month.
Yeah,
That's how it
yeah.
feels, you know?
Time flies
That's
when you
how
get in.
busy we are.
Time flies when you get into your 50s, right, Drew?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't joined you
Uh,
yet. No,
you're
I have.
getting close,
I'm
though.
lying. I'm
You
lying.
yeah. So
I
yeah.
just crossed the line.
Oh, you did. You crossed the line. So I've been
I
there for
did.
about 3 years now. But so I've been at Window Film Mag for about 11 months now. Before I came to Window Film Mag, I was in the promotional products industry. It was B2B, similar to this industry, which is, it's a B2B based industry. I spent 17 years there. Uh, Strangely enough, I wasn't considered a journalist there. I didn't do much in the way of writing. I did mostly digital marketing. I maintained their social media presence. I did a lot of website work. I had the responsibilities on the editorial side of publishing everything that the editorial department had written. So I had a lot of knowledge about how websites worked, how social media worked, and I also have my own podcast. And I wrote or I did the podcast about how promotional products companies can utilize social media for their business. So I have a lot of background in how social media should be used as a business, and I also understood the industry very well. So I kind of parlayed that into a podcast. I did over 150 episodes while I
Wow.
was there, so I have a lot of experience podcasting. Um, and
And I'm
before
going to
that,
jump in, Vinny. I'm going to
sure.
say something because you're the host answering questions, so you're not going to do this.
Mhm.
But I will brag on your behalf because I do know that you have some awards on the wall, sir. And the first
Yes,
time I met you, actually, we had you to come in and you did I think it was via webinar, or at least it was done remotely. But you did a
right.
session with our company on social media and other things related to media that was super enlightening. So yeah, I'm just gonna, plug you a little
Yes.
bit there.
Thank you, Joe. I did win a Neil Award a couple years ago for best use of social media for a business. So I do have,
That's the
I have
big
a lot.
one.
I do
The
have a lot
Neil's
of.
the big one.
Yep, the Neils are the big ones. So I do have, I do have some awards to my credit. But coming into this industry um, was a little bit daunting because um, it's a bit complex. There's a lot going on here. KMR, services a lot of different niche areas. And so I started in, window film and in paint protection. Um, and I have no experience, Drew, in that area at all.
I
I've
was going to
never.
ask you that. That's the first question that
Yeah.
I always like to ask people when they come in as an editor, or even just
Mhm.
get exposed to the industry in general. I always like to ask people if they even knew what window film was. And
Mhm.
that's, did you know what window film was? I'm
Well,
going to make a guess that you knew what tint was, because a lot of people
right.
do, right?
Right.
So,
I knew what tint was for sure. Grew up, some of my friends had, tinted their windows. I understood its utility. But outside of tint, I never heard of paint protection film. I didn't realize how extensive the window film industry was.
oh
So
yeah.
there's a lot going on here. So to me, I had to, I'm learning, and that's really what part of this podcast is going to be about. And we're going to get into that shortly about how I'm also here to learn, because I've really kind of connected with a lot of people through social media and going to the shows. And there's so much longevity in this industry and a lot of knowledge. And just talking to some of these
Yes.
people, I mean, they have so much knowledge. And to me, sometimes I'm talking to them and it's like they're speaking a different language. I'm like, I have no idea what this
Right.
acronym means. I don't know what this means. So in 11 months, I feel like I've learned a lot. I've been able to, uh, really kind of dig into the editorial that we have on our website to kind of figure things out. I've got a lot of great people in the industry and also at KMR who have helped me along the way, try to, get my feet wet and to kind of learn how all this kind of plays in. And to me, I'm a writer. I'm supposed to be writing about this stuff, a bit of stuff that I don't really know much about. But I like to think in 11 months, 10, 11 months, I've come a long way. But again, this podcast, I'm going to get into it into a few minutes about how I want to utilize this podcast as a way to also learn, from my own, requirements, because listening to the people in the industry talk about the things that they do helps me understand window film better.
So ignorance is bliss, as they say, right? But the other thing is, I've always said, when it comes to journalism in particular, sometimes the less you know, the better. Because in the best journalists, the best work, it's your curiosity that
Mm,
drives you, right? And this in
sure.
this industry, there's always something to learn about. There's always something new. And you're right. There are so many people who have been in this industry for so long. And, I mean, the pioneers, they have to figure it out. Like,
Hmm.
they have to, not only do they have to figure out how to install and use and, you know, apply the product, but it's like they have to learn the business side and how to
Sure.
conduct business and sales and whatnot.
Right. Right.
So once they've done that, all that information just becomes, institutional, so to
Right.
speak.
Right.
But the less you know as a journalist, the more you're
Right.
driven by curiosity, and you sometimes not knowing makes you do an even better job.
Right. Right.
I
And
would say,
it's funny that you say that, because I was talking to someone the other day and they were basically talking about how there's so much information out there right now in social media, online, internet, about how you can kind of figure everything out on your own. You don't really need, much in the way of tutorials, people helping you out. You can figure out how to do pretty much anything just
yeah,
through the resources that are online. The tutorials, YouTube especially. YouTube has
so
created
true.
a generation of people who just learn on their own, DIYers. And I was talking to somebody who, was telling me about in the 80s and the 90s, you didn't have all those resources.
Right,
You
right.
had to learn hands on. You had to get out there, boots on the ground, do it yourself. Um,
Figure it out.
find, Figure it out. Find the people that have the knowledge. And it was so much different back then. How these installers had to figure out if they're not being taught, they have to figure out a way to learn it. And it wasn't the information, since the internet has kind of come into play. It's the information is all readily accessible. It's at our fingertips, and and even with that, this industry is very, very still. I'm still trying to learn. I'm on internet every day trying to figure out what this acronym is and how to do this. So Yeah, learning as
And
we
you'll
go.
constantly be learning. I mean,
Yep.
window film industry is constantly evolving, so you're going to always be learning something
Yep.
new, hearing something new,
Yep.
and then at the window international window film conference and tent off, that's when you get
Right.
boots on the ground in with
Yep.
everybody, and then you're really seeing things and hearing
Sure.
things, and it's amazing. It just puts the whole thing in hyper
Yeah,
mode.
I'm looking forward to my first. I didn't get to go last year because I broke my
Oh,
ankle right
that's right.
before.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I did go to
Yeah.
SEMA. I went to SEMA in November, and that was fascinating. There was a lot going on there, but I got to see a lot of window film in action. And
Yeah.
it was fascinating. I'm shocked at how big an industry this is. It's like
True.
we talked earlier. I just knew it as tint before I got into this industry, but just learning all the different aspects of window film and how it all kind of plays in, uh, and seeing it at the shows, I'm like, pretty fascinated and in awe of this industry.
You mentioned something a minute ago about how we found information and we figured things out, right? So you and I and a lot of other people, we've watched like the internet evolve and how we
Hmm.
share information and where we go to find it. And so, you were talking about how we have YouTube now. And back in the day, right, when you had something in particular you wanted to figure out, you would go to what? Like use groups and those
Yep.
types of things,
Oh yeah.
which they're still there, right? They're still active, they're still
Yep.
there. I know this industry used them a lot and probably still does, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool, but it's like a moving target.
Hmm.
And you and I know from working on the media side, it's like we try to meet people with information
Sure.
where they are,
Yep.
right? So I guess that's the idea here, right? You're starting this podcast because people listen to podcasts
Yep.
and watch podcasts like that. That's now more of a
Right.
thing as well on YouTube and live, we hope,
Yep.
right?
Yeah,
So,
and it's funny because I think this is an extension of the question that you're going to ask me about the mission of the podcast, and I think that,
I was going to ask you that.
yeah,
How'd you know that?
I don't know. I read your mind. I can see the brain waves coming in. I'm reading your mind.
You got me.
Yeah, yeah. So the mission of this podcast, honestly, you were kind of touching upon it just right there about how at the shows, boots on the ground, you get to meet everyone. You kind of you make these connections, and when you're not at the shows, like I work full time from home. I know that you are in the you sometimes go into the office in Virginia, but to me, I feel like I'm siloed. I'm isolated at home. Uh, the
True.
only time I get to
Yeah.
really meet people is when I go to these shows. So the podcast itself, there's multiple reasons why I wanted to start this podcast. One is to kind of meet the people that I'm interviewing, the people in the industry who I'm on the phone with, I'm emailing with. But if you have a really good story, if you have a great case study, there's something to be said about doing a live stream or a podcast. Getting those people in a conversation in a video setting where you can really connect with them. And in 2025, I feel like a media outlet like KMR should be creating content in multiple consumable ways. I feel
Oh yeah.
like that writing news stories is that's essential, right? We do that all the time. We're sending out newsletters, we're sending out, we've got magazines, but also you know people are evolving in their consumption of content, right? The internet
Oh
has
yeah.
allowed us to listen to podcasts, watch videos, and so I feel like there was a need for us to kind of jump into that weekly podcast game and just create something that you know shows people that, hey, we know that you're different. There are people that consume content, and they may not be able to read. They may be working, driving. They want to listen.
Yeah.
Maybe the listening part is where they're getting most of their content. And if we can kind of create the content in ways that everyone is able to kind of take it in, that's where I thought that there was a gap. So one of the reasons was for that. Also to help inform, educate, but also to have fun. Like I've always made contention that people sometimes go to social media to get away from work. They're not always going
Right.
to social media to say, hey, you know what? I just want more of what I'm due on a daily basis. Like a lot of times,
Right. Right.
you're like, you know what? I want to go somewhere and be entertained for 15 minutes. Maybe watching this podcast will maybe do a little bit of both, entertain them, also, inform them about something, or maybe showcase someone that they know. And they're like, hey, I know that person. That person's awesome. And that to me is what I really kind of want to showcase. And at the end of this podcast day, we're going to have a little bit of fun. It's Friday the 13th.
That's
Um,
right. I
so
forgot
I,
to tell you, I wanted to commend you. I should have led with this, but I just want to commend you for starting your podcast on the Friday 13th. Okay, no fear. I'm not a superstitious person, so I say go for it. But when I
you
saw
know,
that, I thought, oh, that's great.
when we were looking at dates, I was like, because we want to start this in May, but with the holiday, we were like, you know what, maybe let's push it out until into June, and then you're like, what about June 3rd or yeah, June 13th? It's a Friday. I was like, let's do it. Let's put that on
Let's
the
do it.
calendar.
I think we
Yeah.
both said that. When you reached out to me, I said, well, it's Friday the 13th, but let's do it. Let's
Yep.
just go.
And Drew, back to these interviews that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be interviewing a lot of industry people, like I said, who have great stories, who may have cool case studies they want to showcase. I want them to reach out to me, and this is another reason why I want to kind of become visible on this podcast is for people to get to know me, to put a face to the name that they know, who's writing these articles, who's the person behind the social media. Now they get they put that face to a name, and now it's like, okay,
Exactly.
I want people to feel they can approach me and say, hey, I've got a great story. I would love to be on your podcast. Reach out to me. You can always do it. Message through the page. You can message me at vdriscoll@glass.com, or even just publicly put it in the chat here. Say, hey, can you reach out to me? I think I have a really good story I'd like to talk about. And we'd get you on this podcast. You'd be sitting here just like Drew is, and I would be interviewing about it. So that's
And
kind
it's a
of,
pretty comfortable place to be. I feel very
yeah,
comfortable, Vinny. Yeah, I was going to say a couple of things that one I wanted to circle back to because you talked about like, making this a fun and enjoyable place to be. Perfect industry for that, right?
right.
Because the thing that I've discovered about window film, first of all, great people. I mean, the industry just has so many amazing people in it. And they're so personable and friendly. They take you
Mhm.
right in. And when you do this sort of format, it's like you feel like people will feel like they already know you more
Right,
personally, right? Than just
right,
reading you and seeing your byline or whatever. By the time you get to WFCT after doing this podcast, people are going to feel like they know Vinnie Driscoll well, right? They
right.
see your face, they hear your voice. But it's also, I can see this podcast becoming a great place to talk shop, right?
Hmm.
But do it in a fun way,
Right.
because that's something they love to do. Everyone loves to do in the window film industry: share tips, share insights, share what
Hmm.
they've found, and have a little fun. And they're
Yeah.
great at having fun. I mean, they really
And
are.
and
So,
talk about themselves. Like to me, I feel
and talk
like,
about themselves. Yeah.
that's a real advantage of this podcast. You may be well known you know, outside of the internet, but you want to jump in there, get your face out there, talk about what it is you do, your experience. If you have, like, again, if you have a great story, this is where we'll tell it. And this will go a lot further than a live stream. We're going to archive this, we're going to put it in multiple places, so it's going to exist outside of just a live stream.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So it will go to what? Apple Podcasts, Google
Yeah,
Play,
we're
all the
gonna we're gonna
usual spots, right?
yeah, we're gonna have it on the website. We're gonna have it. The beauty about this software is that I can export this video. We're gonna put it into our Window Film YouTube account. We'll also add it into um, our audio areas, which is, you mentioned Apple. We're gonna have it in Stitcher. We're gonna have it in all the major audio places where you can download and listen for your podcast. So we're gonna get a lot more bang for our buck on after the live stream. So to me, I feel like if anyone wants to get on it, they're going to get a lot of exposure just from being on this podcast.
And then the best way to do that is subscribe wherever it is you like to see
Mhm.
it, right? If you like to listen, if
Yeah,
you like to see it on YouTube, just subscribe
right.
and you know when you do the next one. And you're going to do these. How often are you going to do these?
So the goal is to do these every Friday. We're going to try to set the time at 11 Eastern every
Okay.
Friday. And the reason we want to do that is for continuity. I've found in the past that people will start to really kind of look forward to something if it's consistent instead of having it, okay, it's a Monday here, it's a Friday there. They may not know. I feel like Fridays in the summer is challenging. A lot of people, maybe taking, 3-day weekends. But I think that if you consistently have it as a certain time and day, um, people are going to remember and are going to come back to it. So we'll try to have it. Obviously, we'll work around people's schedules if they can't make that time work. But that's the goal right there, is to have it every Friday. And of course, if there's a holiday on a Friday, we're not going to have it, and we're going to miss some Fridays. But for the most part, 11 a.m. Eastern on Fridays.
I think, excuse me, doing it once a week, you're not going to have any shortage of guests. I mean,
Mm,
they're going to be, I think, hopefully after today, there are going to be a lot of people reaching out to you who have a story they want to share or something they want to say, or they just want
right.
to join you and hang out for a bit, right?
Sure.
So, but I think you won't have any shortage. So the weekly format should work great.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, you'll keep
Yep.
that
And
going.
we'll keep it to 30 minutes. And like I was talking to you offline, I have in the past done, roundtable discussions. I'd like to do that maybe in the future, where I have,
Absolutely.
multiple guests on, where we talk about a certain topic. And those tend to go longer than 30 minutes,
I was going to
so
say that might be your hour-long sessions,
yeah,
right? People are
yeah.
going to want that.
And also, to me, I feel like, these may not be podcasts per se, but going to shows and doing live streams from the shows, I feel like that's another thing that I will be doing more and more of. So anytime you're at the show, and if you see me, for sure, there are opportunities to be part of the conversation online. And I know that there are people like Patrick Francisco who does. He goes to a lot of the shows and he does a lot of social media, and him and I did a live stream in at SEMA last year. So there are people in this industry doing
Oh yeah.
some really good things on social media. But you know what? Not enough. I look at it like it's an iceberg, right? There's so many people in this industry with
Oh, for sure.
so much to contribute, and there's a very very short amount of people. Those small amount of people are doing a lot of stuff on social media, right? But I don't see near enough the amount of podcasting and live streams that should be taking place, especially in an industry that is very hands-on and visual as this one. I mean,
I know.
this industry is ripe for the visual representation, the video, because there's so much really great stuff going on, and just it's fascinating to watch people put film on. Like, I
Yeah,
watch
it
people do
is.
it. I was at the Solar Guard open house a couple months ago. I went to SEMA. I've been to, I went to, other shows, and I'm watching people put film on whatever it is that they're putting film on. And I'm like, that does not look easy. And when I tried my hand at it,
No.
I was like, this is hard. This is very, very difficult.
Absolutely. That's why, you started the segment, you were talking about how your friends put film on, and I thought, I wonder if they did it themselves, because if so, then you probably know what bubbly film looks
Oh
like,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
Because so many people take a stab at it on their own. That's where some of the worst looking film in the world
That
comes
was a
from.
staple in the 80s and
Oh
90s. I remember
yeah. Oh
we used
yeah.
to drive around in cars that, the window tint was all bubbled, and we
Bubbled
didn't
and
even bat an eye.
purple.
It was when you're in your teens and 20s, you're like, yeah, this
You
looks
didn't know
good.
the difference.
It's got all the bubbles, and you're like, what is this? But it's like, who
Not
put this
cool
on? Oh,
anymore.
my brother did this. Oh, it's a great job. Look at that. It's all bubbly. Like,
Little did we know
yeah.
that he
And
did
now I
not have a
see
future in the
and now
industry, right?
I see these people, at these shows putting on, I mean, and they're doing it quickly, and they're doing this amazing job, and I'm like, that's just years and years of experience right there.
Oh my gosh. But like we were talking about, when you have that sharing of information and the
Mm,
conversations, you cut out those years in a way,
yeah,
right? I mean, that's the whole idea of being
yeah,
human, right?
right.
Learning and then evolving, handing that information to the next person. So
Yep,
that's why I have all these, as we're talking, I have all these ideas just firing in my brain for what you could do on this podcast.
for
You
sure.
know, you could have, I mean, sounds kind of cheesy, but every episode could have a tip of the episode or whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
actually that made me want to ask you, so to get technical and not to put you on the spot, but
Mm,
is it possible for people to share video clips? Like, say they weren't on the episode, but they
yeah.
wanted to just send you a little clip and then you shared that in it. Could you do that?
Well, so unless you own the actual video, and like to me, I feel like we can give access to like the exported video, so that people
Okay.
can make. But also, I can do that if somebody says, "Hey, there's a clip between 12 minutes and 12:45 that I would love to just have that clip." There are ways that I can create a snippet of that on my own, but also once it's in YouTube, you can share videos to the exact time. So, I mean,
Oh, okay.
there are ways around where you can kind of share pieces of content. Um, but to your point about what we're going to do on our end, I mean, there's so many options that we can take. We can take sound bites from what we're doing here and put them in the newsletter. And look, it it opens a door for so many opportunities, for content. Not only you can transcribe what we're doing here with interviews with industry people, to create news stories from what you're doing here.
Yeah.
Like instead of putting the news story first and then doing the podcast after, the
Right.
podcast can come first and then the news story can come later. So to me, I feel like that's it's another way to create content, and another opportunity for KMR to really kind of show that, hey, we know that in 2025 people are consuming content in multiple ways. So why don't we get
Yeah.
out there and start a podcast, push it out through a live stream, which, hey, like we mentioned earlier, a live stream isn't, maybe you get 6 or 7 people watching, but what you can do with that content on the back end after the fact, that's where you kind of get your
Exactly.
impact. Yep.
And meet people where they want the content. I know we're getting
Yep.
close to our time here, so and we have to get to those. Have the little surprise for you here at the end, Vinny.
Oh, okay. I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
that.
So I think it'll be fun. But I was going to say it's interesting how you choose to consume content or get your
Yeah.
information. And I don't know about you, but I find like it's different at different moments. So
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
times when I want to read because it's faster, right? I can
Right.
read it, I can skim it.
Yep.
If I have 2 minutes to spend with that content, then I'd give it 2 minutes, right?
Right.
Video's a little trickier. You can index it.
Mhm.
Podcasts as well. Podcasts, what I love about it is it's more like it's kind of like a journey. Like you want to hit
Yeah.
play and just go on that journey for 30 minutes, in your
Yep.
case, or however long. So it might be
Are you
Friday, but you
are
might
you
get in the car and drive somewhere.
are you a big podcast listener?
It comes and goes for me, to be honest. Like, so I'll go through spells where I listen to podcasts religiously.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of tend to shift. The one thing
Mhm.
I do all the time is I read news, and that's
Right.
just what I do. I start the day reading news, right? But then I do listen to podcasts, and it comes and goes. I do it on the lawnmower. That's just
Yep.
my spot. I've got
Mhm.
some grass to cut here, so I'll jump on, tune into a
Right.
podcast, and listen to that. And driving down the road, that's another of my podcast times.
Yeah.
I'm not great about, I should be better about this, but tuning in, and doing it routinely. Like, oh, a
Right.
new one's out, I need to listen. I might want to, but I'm just not good at that.
Yeah.
But the archive's there, so it's like
Right, right, right.
sometimes it's cool to go in and catch up and say, oh, there's 3 episodes and I have an hour and a half drive, great,
Yep.
I'll
Yep.
listen to all three you know
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because for someone who is bullish on doing podcasts, I'm not a big podcast listener. Although when we go on long drives, my wife is always like, "Hey, you want to listen to this podcast?" I always say no. She puts it on anyway, and I get sucked in, and I'm like,
And then
This
you
is
change your mind.
yeah, and I'm like, this is awesome.
That's
Like,
why you always listen to your wife, Vinny. They
I
know,
know.
you know.
I gotta learn that. I
Yeah,
probably reduce the
trust her.
friction. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
So yeah, so we're getting down to, like I said, I
we're
want to
down
keep
to the
these
wire here.
to 30 minutes, but it's Friday the 13th. Drew, I'm a big horror guy.
Yes, I do.
I'll
Yes,
be
I do.
watching horror movies tonight because it's Friday the 13th. But you actually have a little surprise for me
I
today.
do.
What is it?
Yeah, it sounds like it's not a surprise, Vinny. You're giving us
Okay.
away here. It was it was
It's a
a
surprise in that
co-idea.
I don't know the question. You're going to be asking me some trivia questions,
Yeah, I'm
so
going to
I'm
ask
ready.
you some trivia questions here. And in particular, since it's Friday the 13th and you are such a fan, I understand, of the Friday the 13th
Well,
series or
I'm a
whatever.
horror fan. Friday the 13th, you
Oh,
know,
okay. Horror in
I
general. Friday the
I
13th is
do
one
like the
of them.
franchise, but it's pretty hokey. But
Is that
I
what
do enjoy it.
that's what you call it, the franchise, right?
Yeah,
Okay, I
yeah.
couldn't think of the word for it. So yeah, but so disclaimer, I'll just be completely overt here. I I like horror. I like some horror movies, mostly like the classics. I think I told you that. Like, I love The Shining, one of my favorite
Yeah.
movies of all time. Psycho's amazing.
Oh yeah.
Hitchcock, I love his work. But Friday the 13th, I know nothing about. So
Okay.
today's questions come compliments of full disclosure, Chat GPT.
Oh, look at that. Okay.
So
Okay.
if it has a hallucination, as they call it, for in the AI world, and some of these questions are wrong, that's not on me. All right, we're just
Okay.
gonna roll with it. Just do your
All right.
best.
So if anybody wants to answer these questions, go ahead in the chat and let us know.
Oh
If
yeah.
you know the answer. So this is open to anyone. So go ahead, Drew. How many
All
questions do
right,
you have?
5 questions. You ready?
Okay.
Here's the first one. In which Friday the 13th movie does Jason Voorhees, is that right? Voorhees?
Yes. Jason
Okay,
Voorhees.
I just know the first name. First don his iconic hockey mask.
Oh, okay.
In which one? Which movie?
Ooh, that's a good
And all
question.
right, it's multiple choice.
Okay.
I'll make it a little easier on you. So I'll just say part one, two, three, or four.
I think it's part three, to be honest with you.
Well, you, sir, would be correct.
Oh,
Good
nice.
job.
Yeah,
You really are a fan.
yeah. I mean, the first, I think 4 or 5 films, I really enjoy them. But there's like 45 films or whatever it is. There's so many,
Is
Drew.
it really? There's
There,
45?
no, there's not that many. But
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
see, that's how little I know. You had
It's
me for a second. I'm
it's
like,
over
wow.
10. I think it's even more than Police Academy. I think Police Academy had like
No.
I don't know what it is. It's in the teens. But Brian, who works with us at KMR, he said three. So Brian got that one right
He
as
got it.
well. He
Good
got it
job,
right.
Brian.
Okay.
All right.
So
So
he
we have
must
two
be a horror
fans in
fan like
house.
me. So
Yeah, I was going to say we have two. All right, you ready for question two?
okay, I am ready.
What is the name of the lake where most of the Friday the 13th films are set?
Yeah, you don't have to give me the options. I already know this.
You don't want the options
No.
even?
Camp
Okay.
Crystal Lake. Camp Crystal Lake.
You got it. This
Yeah.
is impressive. This is
And
impressive.
so a fun fact about that is I grew up in New Jersey, and about half an hour from where I grew up was where they filmed it. Because
No
that whole
kidding.
that movie was filmed in New Jersey, and I never went up there, but I hear
Is
it's
there a
kind of
reason for that, Vinny? Were you
probably
scared to
because
go up
I don't
there?
want to get murdered. I don't want to get murdered. But yeah, so I hear it's just as creepy at the lake in New Jersey where they filmed it. So all right,
I would have to go up there. I'm
all
sorry.
right,
I would have to
okay.
see that. Number three.
For the
Yes,
sake
we
of
got to.
Brian, who's watching, I won't. You can give me the options, so
Okay,
you
all
can
right,
jump
that's
in, or
good.
anyone can jump in.
That's right. Okay.
Okay.
So, question three. Who is the killer in the original Friday the 13th, which, by the way, was in 1980?
Hmm.
Who
Yeah,
is the killer in the
I know
original?
the answer.
Okay.
But if you want to go down and read the options,
Okay. It's Jason Voorhees, Pamela Voorhees, Tommy Jarvis, or Roy Burns.
that would be it's Jason's mom, Pamela, who was the killer.
Man, you are. On it. Yes, that is
Yes,
correct.
Brian got that
Jason's
one
mom.
right as well. Yes.
Brian got it too. Yep. So you
Yeah.
guys are clearly, yeah. All
Yeah,
right. Well, we're gonna.
there's a fun party joke that you can or a party trivia questions like how many people did Jason Voorhees kill in the first film? And
Hmm,
you get people sitting there like, oh, was it 10? Was it 8? It's like none. He didn't kill anyone. It was his
he
mom
didn't
who,
do it.
yeah, it was his mother doing all the killing. So,
Oh wow. Okay. And I did not know that. Not that I
Drew,
knew any of these, but
The
that I
next
did
time
not
I'm
know.
down in Virginia, we gotta
We're
watch
gonna
we're gonna watch some Friday the 13th.
we're gonna go on a run. All right, here we go. So, question 4. Which Friday the 13th installment features Jason going to space? No
Ooh.
way. Now, see, that's when you know you've gone to too many,
That
you know.
that that's the Fonzie jumping the shark.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that this franchise jumped the shark before that. I think it was when he went to Manhattan. But the space one, I think it was honestly, I think it was 10. Was it 10?
All right, let's see. That's correct.
I
It
got
was
that right.
10.
That was
Jason X. That's
that
the 10th.
that was a guess. That was a guess. I'm lucky to have gotten it. I don't even know how many more they have after that. But I always
Well, we
thought
know
that
they have 10. You have to end it at that. If you go to space, you're
no,
in a horror movie, you're done.
you got to end it at Friday the 13th, part 13. I always said like that's
Oh,
got to be the
right.
finisher. Maybe they
Right.
have already done that, but I lost interest well before this.
Oh no, they went to space and you were done.
It was like, no, we can't have this. Too
All
silly.
right. The fifth and
Okay,
final question. Are you ready?
I
I hope
am.
at least I hope at least this one of them has to stump
Okay,
you. But if not, I'll be thoroughly impressed. I think this is a great
okay.
start. All right. Number 5. In Freddy versus Jason, who does Jason fight?
I mean,
Ooh,
this.
he's delaying. He's pausing.
Why
Did
don't
we
you give
get
me the
him?
options? Give me the
All
options on
right.
this one.
Okay. 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 All right. Well, I don't need to say the letters. Michael Myers, Chucky, Freddy Krueger, or Leatherface?
It's got to be Freddy Krueger. Is this one of those trick
Ah,
questions? It's got to be
you
right.
did it. You
All
did
right.
it. You
It's
got
a,
it.
it's a trick
That's
question.
5 for 5, sir. That's 5 for 5.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got lucky on
I
the
don't
spaceship one.
have a Friday the 13th trophy here for you, but we'll come up with something.
You should have had a
Okay.
knife or something with a little
Yeah,
bit
you're
of.
exactly,
There
exactly.
you go.
All
Well,
right.
Drew, thank you for taking the time today. I think this was a great introduction to the podcast.
I enjoyed it.
We had some viewers. We also have the International Window Film Conference in Tintoff, WFCT, saying see you all in Reno. We're looking forward to that in September. I'm excited for that. Hopefully, I don't break my ankle this year like I did last year.
You won't.
I'll have to stay in a bubble for like a couple weeks prior to that. I play a lot of hockey, so I maybe I'll stop playing for a couple weeks prior to that. But I'm looking forward to that as well. Do you go to the WFCT, Drew?
I do. I was gonna
Okay.
say, yeah, I will be there. I'm there every year. You'll either find me behind a camera filming or here and there doing
Okay.
various things. But yeah, I'm there. So I get to see everybody and I love the awards program and just mixing with everyone. So
Yeah.
find me, say hello. And yeah, I look forward to seeing everybody. Thanks for having me on today. This
Yeah.
was fun. This was a lot
Yeah,
of
it
fun.
was
So,
great. And if like I said earlier in the podcast, if anybody wants to, they have a great story they want to share, they want to be on the podcast, email me at vdriscoll, that's VDRISCOLL at glass.com or message the page, just get in contact with me and we'll talk about your story and we'll set you up like every Friday. Like we'll try to do every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. That's when we're going to have these podcasts, and we're going to archive them, and we're going to have them on YouTube, and listenable for podcasts. So we're going to do a lot with this, and I'm excited. So Drew, thanks again for joining me today. This was great. I had a lot of fun. 40 minutes has soared by, but I
oh,
think we
whew,
got
okay. I ran
a
you over
lot
there.
accomplished here.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Benny.
Awesome,
A
Drew.
lot
For
of
Drew,
fun.
I'm Vinny. We'll see you next week on the Window Film Magazine podcast. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye.